Freckles here, and I just wanted to talk to you briefly about what Year 4 will be doing in Spring 1. Our topic this half term is Traders and Raiders, and this is looking all at the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings and that period of history within Britain. This part of history comes not long after the Roman settlement in Britain, so we'll be looking at what happens after what we've learnt in Autumn 2 and extending our knowledge on further within our own history. Throughout our history lessons, we'll be looking at who the Anglo-Saxons are, who the Vikings are, and the impact that they had on Britain, and also their beliefs on death and the afterlife. In Spanish this half term, we will be continuing to learn new Spanish words and phrases, and we'll be looking at how to properly write Spanish words now after we've done lots and lots of speaking of Spanish. In geography, we'll be following the Anglo-Saxon settlements within the UK and following through the Vikings and how they raided through different towns and cities within the UK and how that had an impact. So to do this, we'll be looking at map work, and we will also be doing some field work looking at cliffs and hills and different features of the UK. In RE this half term, our question is, why do people think that life is a journey? We'll be looking at the religions we already know, Islam, Hinduism and Christianity, and looking at the similarities and differences within those religions and how they believe that life is a journey through the milestones they make in life, such as christenings and weddings and funerals. In Art and DT this half term, we are looking at light and dark. We'll be continuing the composition element we looked at in Autumn 1, and we'll be putting that in to our learning this half term. However, we're focusing more now on mixing and tinting colours to create different shades of the similar colours. In PSHE this half term, we are looking at bullying again. We are looking all about TikTok. We are looking through identity and gender, and we are also looking at how to make ourselves feel okay, as well as fair trade and the changes that we can make through choices. In computing this half term, we are looking at creating programs. We want to create our own algorithms, programs, we want to debug our programs, and we also want to create repeating loops in our programs this half term. In music, we are looking at the sound of our world, and we are going to be focusing on Asia. As we do that, we will be listening to and performing some Asian music. We will also be looking at percussion, mostly with our voices, and we'll be working to sing as a whole class. In PE, we will be continuing with our swimming, but we will also be doing tag rugby this half term. So we've done our tennis and our basketball previously, so we've got lots of passing and ball skills, and now we will be developing these in a new sport which the children are really going to enjoy. In science, our unit is all about sound. We'll be looking at how sound is made, what happens when sound is made louder or more quiet, and we'll also be looking at the differences in different sounds. It would be really, really helpful if at home you might look into some famous Vikings perhaps. I know that with Marvel, we might have some name recognition of some Vikings, such as Loki or Thor. So if you wanted to do a little bit of research at home or check out one of your Myon books, that would help us tremendously. This half term we'll be continuing to look at multiplication and division. All throughout Year 4 we've been practicing our times tables, so hopefully being speedy in our times tables will help us with this unit. If you're feeling a little bit unconfident with your times tables, make sure you're logging on to TT Rockstars at home and having a practice, and that will help you to get speedier and speedier. We do use TT Rockstars in school as well, just to help support those that might need a bit of extra support with their times tables. Now, we did look at multiplication and division in Autumn 2, so lots of these methods we are aware of. Our favourite multiplication method at the moment is the column method. That's the one we feel the most confident with, and we'll be using it the exact same way, except for this time, rather than 1 and 2 digit numbers, we will be multiplying a 3-digit number by a 1-digit number. The example I have here is 214 multiplied by 3. It looks quite tricky, but using our column method, the same way that we've used it before, we will be able to get there very easily. My first thing to do is to look at the ones unit. We always start with the ones and work our way up, and you might see why in a moment. So 4 multiplied by 3, we can use our times tables. 4, 8, 12, or 3, 6, 9, 12. I know it's 12. However, I cannot put 12 in my ones column. I need to put my 10 at the bottom of my tens column, so I do not forget that I've got another 10 now, and I can put my 2 here. Next, we'll move on to our tens column, and as we know, we have an extra 10 now, so we could either add these tens together and do 2 tens times 3, which would be 6, or we could do 1 times 3 and 1 times 3, and add both of those 3's together to again find 6. Finally, we will look at the hundreds column. I have got 2 hundreds, and I'm going to multiply that by 3. Again, with my 2 and 3 times tables, I know that the answer will be 6. And very speedily there, I found out that 214 multiplied by 3 is 662. We can use this with any multiplication, and we will find our accuracy to be very, very good, as the children love their column method. We will be looking more into division this half term, as this is an area that the children are a little bit less confident in. We will be using our bus stop method to help us divide accurately and easily. So our question here again is 635 divided by 5. I drew it out in the bus stop method, and rather than start in the ones column this time, we will start in the hundreds column and work our way down. It is just the opposite of the multiplication. So I know that inside 6 I have 1 5 and 1 left over. So I'll put my 1 5 up here, and my 1 left over I will put in my tens column. So the 3 now becomes a 13. This is similar to over here, so the children hopefully will find this useful. Now I know that in 13 I have 5, 10, then it goes to 15. 15 is too high, so I can only fit 5 into 13 2 times, and then I have got 10, 11, 12, 13. I've got 3 left over, which I will put into my ones column. Now I just need to find out how many 5s are in 35. Once again, using my times table speedily, I know 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. I've got 7. And just like that, I know that 635 divided by 5 is 127. This is something we will continue to practice in our spring term, and hopefully with our practicing times tables and TT Rockstars, we will find it super easy to multiply and divide any number.
Now I will be going over a few of the things that we will cover during English this half term. We will be discovering heroic myths, a literacy style that adds magic, fantasy and exaggerated detail to real events. We will be doing this by retelling the story of the Sword and the Stone. This is linked to our topic, as many historians believe that there was a British leader called King Arthur, the main character of the Sword and the Stone, who was responsible for fighting against Anglo-Saxon invaders when they arrived around 500 AD. We have little evidence to show whether the accounts of King Arthur are factual, as King Arthur comes from a period of time known as the Dark Ages. Many of the stories that exist about King Arthur have been written down years later in the form of myths. To complete our retelling, we will be focusing on the writing features, adverbs, subordinate clauses and speech. These elements will help to make our writing more engaging for the reader. Let's take a look at some of the features. Okay, so first of all we're going to look at adverbs. Adverbs give more detail to the verb. In our sentence, Arthur grasped the sword, the verb would be grasped because that's our doing word, and we want to give that more information. So how did he grasp the sword? Arthur grasped the sword, so let's say firmly. Arthur grasped the sword firmly. And we will focus on our Y adverbs just to help the children. So Arthur grasped the sword firmly. We will also be looking at how we can create a fronted adverb, and that simply means that we take the adverb and we place it at the front of our sentence, again to make our writing more complex and more engaging for the reader. So that would become firmly Arthur grasped the sword, and then the children will need to punctuate with a comma at the end of the adverb. We will then be looking at subordinate clauses, which we've already looked at the start of the year, but we will recap throughout just to make sure that the children have a really good understanding of how to make their writing more complex by using subordinating conjunctions. So here we have Arthur had to be hidden. So the subordinating conjunctions that the children have come across so far are if, since, as, when, although, whilst, after, because, until, and before. So in this instance, we could say Arthur had to be hidden until he was old enough. So the subordinating conjunction would be until. So Arthur had to be hidden until he was old enough. And again, we can take our subordinate clause and place it at the start of the sentence to make our writing more interesting. So the aim is that they will use a variety of sentence starters and sentence openers throughout. So it's up to them how they like to structure their sentences. So here it would become, until he was old enough, Arthur had to be hidden. So until he was old enough, Arthur had to be hidden. And with a subordinate clause, if the subordinate clause comes at the end of the sentence, we don't need to punctuate with a comma. However, when we place a subordinate clause at the start of the sentence, we place a comma at the end of the clause to show where it ends. So until he was old enough, Arthur had to be hidden. We have been really impressed with the children's writing across Year 4 so far, and I'm sure that the children will be able to apply their learning to their retelling of The Sword and the Stone.